to listen to my story. Hopefully you'll find it a bit interesting and find some value in it. And thank you, Yvette, for inviting me to your wonderful show. Been looking forward to this. And so how did I get into this? Well, it's a long story. I emigrated to Australia in 1990, 30 years ago. And when I emigrated as an electrical engineer, of all things. All right, that's how I got into Australia. And back then, for those of you that are 50 plus, maybe you may have remembered there was a big recession at the end of the 80s, right at the end, beginning of the 90s. And I got caught up in that recession in Australia. So I came to Australia and I couldn't get work as an engineer. So I decided I wanted to stay, so I had to relook at something else. So I wanted to do something that I wanted to do. I was an engineer because my father was an engineer, and that was a good, I guess a good career to be in, but not necessarily what I wanted to do. So anyway, I had this opportunity and I decided to become a nutritionist. So I really studied back as a nutritionist, and I was working part-time doing that with an uncle of mine that was a naturopath here. So that's where I get my 30 years experience from. And that took me on a journey, a very, very, very big journey in my life in helping people. And I always look back, I have to say, I always look back at my engineering, mindset. This is really important. I was telling this to a patient today, that I think I'm a pretty good or a good nutritionist, because unlike so many naturopaths and clinicians that we have here and perhaps all around the world, I spend a lot of time, and as I did with you, Yvette, going back to why you had the problem. And I tend to spend a lot of time doing that with my patients. It's not good enough just for me as a clinician, and I specialize in allergies and food intolerance identification, but it's not important enough for me just to be able to say to a patient, you have to stay away from this and this food. See you later, or I'll help you with a meal plan. Because practitioners that do that miss a lot of really important information by not going back far enough. And that's kind of how I got into it. And that's kind of my story. So I've been doing it for 30 years. I love what I do. I have no intentions of giving up at this point. My wife and I, she's a practitioner, bless her, she's a homeopath and British as well. And we talk about what we want to do as little old people, and we still want to be practicing, and I still have no intentions of not being practicing at 85 years old, because I've got all this information, and I'll have more information by the time I'm 85 in another 30 odd years. So why wouldn't you want to keep sharing that? So that's my story. That's a little bit about me.
I understand. I still haven't been able to find the link, how you just went. Obviously, you talk about the shortage in, you talk about the recession, and then your uncle your uncle being a naturopath. But it could have been anything. What was the interest for you at that point?
I always loved biology. I was really good in school in biology. Really good, and I loved that science. I loved biology. I loved all of that stuff. And but I didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I ended up going to uni and becoming an electrical engineer. Right. But when I got to Australia, there were no jobs for electrical engineers. So I had to find something. Now, my uncle was doing really well, even in the recession, as a naturopath. In fact, one of his regular patients was Mel Gibson, because Mel Gibson was Australian, and he used to come and see him all the time. And I really appreciated the help that he was giving these other people. So even though I had an engineering background, I felt that really wasn't my calling, if that makes sense.
Right, yeah.
And helping people is really important. And we're quite, without getting esoteric or anything, we're quite spiritually minded, in as much that, we feel strongly, both my wife and I do feel strongly about helping people. And we've always had that. Even before I met my wife, I felt very strongly about giving back as much as I could to help somebody else. And that's the correlation, that's the link. So we went from engineering to, you know, helping people, and it's been the journey, and it's been a great journey. Learned a lot myself. I often think back, what would I have been like as an engineer? You know, probably overweight, unhealthy, you know, high blood pressure, who knows? And I look at myself today, and I'm grateful to the decision that I made in helping all those people, which in turn has helped me and given me a great life. So yeah, happy days.
Well, I have to say, we've got a mutual friend, and I, as you know, was in severe agony, and I've spoken to him some time, and he, you know, said to me, I have a friend, my best friend is married to him, etc., etc. I doubt if he'll be able to see you because he's mega busy. And I'm like, absolutely, please, I'm begging you, let me get hold of him somehow. And, you know, by a miracle, you contacted me. But that wasn't, for me, it wasn't quick enough. I wanted you to just give me something. And you were very adamant that's not how you do things. Can you just tell us about why you wouldn't just say, well, based on what I told you, you know, I've got a pain here and I've got a pain there. You know pretty much from the body's physiology that if somebody's describing where the pain is, you could pretty much, you know, assign what you think.
I prescribe something for that.
Yeah. So
Okay.
why wouldn't you do that with why don't you do that?
Okay, so here's the thing. If you present with some symptoms, I want you to just think about this. If you present with some symptoms, I could be like a GP or like many practitioners, natural practitioners, and I've got a patient that's coming in, they're presenting with some tummy problems or some aches and pains. I would be able to certainly prescribe something for that, maybe that ache and that pain, whether it's a herbal product or a tincture or something. But that's not good enough for the long term. If we do that, we're only ever remedying, putting a plaster over that sore. We're not fixing the problem. So when you came to see me, you know, on Zoom, as we're doing now, and I spent that time with you, and I spent quite a bit of time with you, I took the time and respect for my patients, as I do, to identify what their problems are and then try and formulate where that problem came from, so that I could go right back. Now, if I'm just looking at, and I'll show you on the screen, just a little bit of a thing here, all right? That's giving me that much of the story. That's the symptoms, that's the pain that you're getting. But that pain can often be presented by all this other information behind that so many doctors and medical practitioners and natural therapists don't take the time to understand or identify with. And once you understand where the problem's coming from, then you understand what you need to do to fix, not the symptom, not the pain, but the start of that problem. Now, you know, I'm certainly not going to explain, you know, our conversation on the phone, but as an example, if I have a patient that comes in and they're presenting with a lot of tummy problems, and I had one today, a lot of gut problems, a lot of issues, a lot of stuff going on, bloating, tired, irritable, moody, poor memory, headachy, confusion, all of this stuff. Now, I might say to that person, okay, you've got a tummy ache. I can give you something just to settle down your tummy. I can give you something for the headache. I can give you something for all of those symptoms. But the minute you stop that, the problem is going to come back. So that's not good enough. So what I did with this patient, as I do with all my patients, is I took the time to go right back and understand where the problem came from, what the problem is. I identified the problem, the proper problem, not the symptoms, the proper problem. And that was by going back and identifying everything. Now, we know that the problems that I deal with as a nutritionist are predominantly food related. All right. That's why I specialize in food intolerance assessments. And that's how we can do this over Zoom and have patients in the US, the UK, and all over Australia. Not because they can come and see me for testing, but because the information that I'm able to share with my patients is based on 60,000 patient consultations in 30 years. So I've got an exceptionally good understanding of foods and these triggers. But again, if I just take out the food and I don't repair the problem, that's no different to giving you something for the problem without taking out the food. So it becomes a marriage. And this is really important. This is where so many, again, this is, and where I find the problems with so many practitioners here is that they don't do that. So we want to combine the two. We want to find out what all the foods are. We want to take those foods out for the moment, give the body a rest, and then we want to go in and fix the problem. Not at no time. It is not common that I will actually fix the problem by giving something to somebody for the symptom. All right. So I don't treat the symptoms. We treat the problem, and we treat and we stop that problem antagonizing by changing the diet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. I mean, of course it makes sense. I'm going through it, and you know, I'm going through it, and as we've just talked about before we've actually started recording, me digressing and thinking I'm okay is a problem, because I'm still keeping the foods in my body that are causing the inflammation and the issues. I've got to say, I was absolutely astounded to think that the role of a nutritionist would play so much psychologically.
Yes.
I have no idea. I have no idea. And, you know, I feel as though I've tried every modality in terms of, you know, personal development and, you know, body physical, but I'd never considered that my nutrition would play a part in my health in the way that it's showing. Yeah,
Absolutely. And I have to say that, you know, I've kind of developed my own, I guess, my own technique for treating my patients, because what I do, I really do spend a lot of time identifying where these problems come from. And a lot of nutritionists don't do that. A lot of nutritionists might just help you with a meal plan. They might help you with this. They might help you with trying to just tell you from your A, B, C, Ds of different foods. And because of my involvement with food intolerance, allergies, and I used to work, you know, and I'll give you an example. I spent 15, 20 years working in Melbourne, and out of that, 10 or 12 years of that time, I was the main testing facility for a number of top Melbourne nutritional doctors. So I've learned a lot in that decade of working with these GPs, very, very, very well-respected nutritional GPs. A lot of extra stuff that, you know, it was like a training, it was like a master's degree in itself, that so many nutritionists just weren't privy to. Had no access to, you know, so you know, there's all that experience there, and we always try and bring that experience, you know, into our clinic. So, you know, when you see a nutritionist, don't expect every nutritionist to do what I've done for you, because they simply just won't. It's really just based on my years of being fortunate to work with so many good medical doctors and GPs, and you know, I spent a lot of time working with a bowel specialist that specialized in nutritional medicine, so a proper surgeon. You know, so I guess that all of that is kind of what's formed our consultation today.
I'm curious, can we just cover off something that I found really interesting? When you talked about over the 30 years that you've been doing this work, you mentioned that at no point did you ever see, I don't know if I'm quoting this right, but I just remember clocking what you said. You said at no point, very rare did you ever see somebody who was highly stressed or who had got, you know, autoimmune disease, illnesses, stroke, cancer, and so forth, that had not had some serious stress leading up to that. Am I correct in that?
Yeah. So when you have experience, when you see lots of patients, not 100 patients, not 1,000 patients, but tens of thousands of clients, you ask questions, you ask deep-seated questions, you start to pick up a trend of what's going on with people. And we all like to think that we're individual, right? We all like to think that we're unique. And whilst their personalities may be unique to a point, the physiology of our bodies are quite common to certain types of traits and so forth. And one thing I've noticed, and it is without doubt, one thing I've noticed, that if I have a patient of mine that comes in to see me and she's got breast cancer, and I ask, it may not necessarily be breast cancer now, she may be a surviving cancer patient, and she might have had it 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I go back with that patient and I say, let me just ask you some questions, because we're building up a picture here of why you've been sick since the breast cancer. But go back to when you were diagnosed with the breast cancer, and then I want you to go back 12 or 18 months before, and I'm going to ask you some questions, and you know the questions I'm going to ask you, right? And the question I'm going to ask is, who died, who left, how much money have you lost, who's not talking to you, what happened at home, school, work, kids, operations, what's your story? And
because you did it before, you have to do that. It's just amazing.
and you just see them starting to get kind of traumatized in the face, and maybe they're starting to well up and cry and stuff like that, and they go, you know, and then they blurt it out, you know, my husband passed away, my husband died, the kid got sick, something happened, my mum died, you wouldn't believe the year I had this and this happened, and they're giving me these horrendous stories about what happened to them. And they've not recognized that stress is so intense, is so traumatizing, that it's actually created physiological changes in their body, that within 6 to 12 months, they are now starting to develop some significant health problems. Now, it can be breast cancer, it can be a bowel cancer, it can be any kind of cancer, right? It doesn't matter. But also autoimmune conditions. You know, I have patients of mine that have, you know, lupus, or they have some other kind of autoimmune condition. You know, there are many, even severe allergies or hives. I've got a common one where I would often get men coming in round about 65 to 75, all right? And they've got rashes all over their bodies, all right? Hives, big welts and rashes and one thing and another. And I said to them, okay, well, how long have you had the problem for? Oh, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. What have the doctors said? Oh, doctor said that, you know, it's just hives. Okay, what did the doctor tell you about why do you have the problem? Well, they haven't said that. They've just given me an antihistamine. So then I say, okay, let me ask you some questions. Who died, who left, da-di-da-di-da-di-da-di-da. And they get really upset and they say, my wife passed away. And I go, how long ago did your wife pass? And they go, 8 months ago, 7 months ago, you know, 1 year ago. And I go, how long have you had the hives for? And they go, 6 months. And I go, there's your answer. The problem is that you are so traumatized and stressed with what's gone on with your wife passing or getting sick or a divorce or something like that, mainly with these older guys, it's their wives passing, that you've had all this stress put onto you. And now the very foods that you are eating today, the very foods that you are eating, your immune system is looking at those completely differently to when life was going along nicely. Now that you're under stress, your immune system has perceived some of these foods as being a threat. You're consuming these foods, they're coming out of your skin. Your immune system is now trying to initiate a defense mechanism, and that defense mechanism is coming out as hives. And they say, well, you know, it's still not quite sinking in yet, but it's starting to sink in. And they go, well, what do I do? Well, we'll do a test, we'll find out. So we'll do a test and things come up, and invariably, you know, Australians, I guess a bit like the English, are good at drinking a little bit. So, you know, they're drinking, you know, 2 or 3 beers a night. And I say, look, you've definitely got problems with beer. You've definitely got problems with these foods. And I say, well, how's that? Because I've eaten this all my life. I never had a problem with this before. And I go, remember what we said. You were going along really well, eating the foods, drinking your 3 beers a night. Life was good, but there was no stress. Okay, you're onto a good thing. Now your life partner is gone. Your wife has passed. The stress has caused your immune system to kind of go that way quickly. And now it's not the same immune response that it was before. So what we need to do, we need to identify these foods, which we've done. We need to take them out. And then we need to repair your immune system. So then I put them onto some protocols, very powerful protocols to repair the immune system. At no time do I give them something for the hives. No time do I give them a natural alternative, say, as an antihistamine or some cream to put on, because that's not going to fix the problem. What's going to fix the problem is identifying where the problem came from, understanding that it was the immune system, taking out the triggering foods or the triggering events, and then repairing that immune system. And invariably 8.5 times out of 10, you know, they'll just get better. All right. And that's what we do. So yes, stress and post-traumatic stress has a significant, absolutely monumental effect from that point forward on how your health is going to respond. If you are under a lot of stress, and I mean, things have happened, you're under a lot of stress, you know, life's just not kind of going well, you need to take that on board and recognize that your body is on a downward crash. And if you don't arrest that downward crash, you're going to be the train wreck at the end of that. And that's what I try and imply to my patients and moving forward, because life just kicks you in the pants. I mean, remember what I told you? I think I told you my daughter had cancer. Did I tell you that? Did I tell you that? No, I can't remember.
If you did, you only touched on it because I would have remembered.
Okay. You know, my daughter had cancer at 5 years old. I mean, it was a massive stress. It caused, you know, the split up of my wife and I at the time. It caused the split up of the family because there's an 85% divorce rate amongst parents whose child have been diagnosed with a life-threatening illness like cancer or something like that. 85% split up, and we were part of that. And but I knew when I was under that immense stress and just things are crashing down, daughter's got cancer, you know, wife can't cope, you know, there's depression going on, you know, then she wants a divorce because she can't cope, you know, and then we're settling the assets and the house and everything I worked for, and all of that kind of stuff is going. It's a big story, right? But I had enough experience in this to realize that I better look after myself, because this is the exact time that if you don't look after yourself, that's when you get sick.
But could you prevent it? I mean, like you said, you knew to look after yourself, but people like myself, people like the people who'll be watching this, suddenly we just find ourselves ill. So, and these are with foods that we've just been eating all along, because that was the big question for me. So I've not changed my diet. In fact, I think I've improved it. I've done really, you know, I've cleaned it up as far as I'm concerned. And yet you said to me, you've cleaned it up to a point, and you've probably introduced foods in there that are triggering it. So, but let's go back to the actual question, which is, when you're under that amount of stress, can you actually even...
You can certainly avert the crisis by being educated in understanding what we're talking about here. The problem is, here's the problem, is that 99.999% of people that are under that stress don't have the education available to them to make that choice. They're in crisis mode. They're just getting by. They don't have that opportunity. And this is the not the fault, but this is just society. You know, we don't fix anything until it's wrong, until it's broken. This is the NHS. Don't come in until you're broken. When you're broken, come in and we'll try and fix the broken bit. But we don't want to fix all the bits before, because that's going to cost us more money. So we just want to fix the broken bit.
Yeah.
And this is the lacking education in 100 years' time, I hope that we are smart enough as a society, as a human race, to understand all the things we did wrong in the 20th and the 21st century, and look back, or in 200 years' time, and look back and go, oh my God, I can't believe they were eating and doing all this bad stuff, and no wonder they were all sick. Because I think that that time will come where there will be this education, starting from school, starting from, you know, all the way through, you know, through someone's life. But at this point in time, that education is not readily available without that person wanting to look for that education, like you're doing now. So, you know, I was fortunate that I understood that. I've lived my life by that. My wife, when I met her at a lecturing conference, you know, that I was giving. So she was already in that mindset, you know, and which was great. So there's a lot of people out there that want to do that. And if you want to learn to do that, then yeah, absolutely. You know, you need to see somebody like myself, whether it's on Zoom, or whether you see somebody in the UK or something, you know. But again, it can become very confusing, because there are agendas, all right? There are agendas. And we look at, and I'm sure it's no different in England, when we look at food, and we automatically assume, and I'm sure it's big in England, you know, it's certainly big in Australia, you know, things like vegan diets, gluten-free diets. We have something over here called a FODMAP diet, which is, you know, brought out by the Royal Prince Alfred Hospital in Australia, FODMAP, which is an allergy type diet. You know, so there are trends out there for diets, but you know what they are? They are generalizations. If you're a food manufacturer, is it easy for me to sell you gluten-free food, or is it easy for me to sell you, you know, the Yvette diet regime? It's not easy to do the Yvette diet regime. It's not a sellable commodity. But gluten-free is a sellable commodity, because it's either got gluten in it or it doesn't have gluten in it. It's very black and white, cut and dried. And so, you know, there are agendas by food manufacturers that jump on the bandwagon and go, we're going to start making healthy food, and it's going to be gluten-free. You know, the other big agenda, which I absolutely detest, is kombucha. You have kombucha over there?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, it's really, it's not good. All right, for a lot of my patients, it's devastating. But there's a whole world movement that kombucha is really good because it's good for your gut, you know, it's good for your tummy, but it's not. It's, for a lot of people, it's devastating. So, you know, you've got to be able to understand.
Isn't that adding yeast into the body?
Yes,
for
yeah.
a body that may well have too much yeast, such as mine, the candida.
That's right. So this is what it's doing. So it'll feed a candida infection, feed it out of control. And people are so brainwashed with this. They go, oh, but it's good for your probiotics. I don't believe it. It's good for your probiotics. And they're so brainwashed because they've read so many articles in, you know, women's magazines or on Google or somewhere where all these magazines and all these articles are written, that they're actually believing the hype, you know, and they're not understanding that it may be good for somebody else, but it may not be good for you. Gluten-free is very good if you're celiac or gluten intolerant. The trouble is that 95% of all my patients that come in and swear black and blue that they are gluten intolerant are actually not gluten intolerant. They are candida patients, right? Totally different.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if I'm going into too much because I remember you saying to me, look, don't get caught up in the whole gluten-free thing. That's gluten-free is completely different to, what did you say? Was it completely different to wheat-free or something?
Yeah. So gluten-free is completely different to a candida diet. And gluten-free is not wheat-free. You can have a wheat intolerance. Mm-hmm. And people automatically go, oh, I'm gluten intolerant. Why are you gluten intolerant? Because I've got a wheat problem. Okay, you got a wheat problem, but that doesn't mean you got a rye problem. It doesn't mean you got a barley problem. It doesn't mean you have an oat problem. It's just telling me you've got a wheat problem. So why are you staying away from these other really important grains, which are going to make your life so much easier by thinking that you're gluten-free? You know, and effectively, when I start drilling down, I find that they're not even gluten-free. What they've done is they've eaten cakes and pastries and bread, and they've got bloated. So they've automatically thought, I'm gluten intolerant, so they stay away from gluten. By default, they're staying away from cakes, pastries, you know, biscuits, and all of that stuff, coincidentally, which contain lots of sugar and yeast, and they get a result. So they automatically think that they are gluten intolerant, but they're not gluten intolerant because they're still sick. They're still, oh, I've kind of, it made a bit of a difference, but it didn't make a huge difference. No, because you're still eating too much fruit, you're still eating mushrooms, you're still drinking kombucha. This is all gluten-free, all right? But it's still affecting you. And this is where I spend nearly all my life, you know, professionally, going through with patients, telling them and helping them understand that what they thought was gluten-free and what they thought was causing all their bloating and distension and tummy problems and all of this thing actually is not. It may be a wheat intolerant, and I'll find that out, and I can certainly identify these, but it's not necessarily a gluten intolerance. So yeah, that's it.
That's it. It's a a really, really important distinction, and thanks for clarifying that. So, because I was going to say to you around the whole stress and the midlife woman, and it seems to be at that point. What is it when we get to this age that suddenly our diets have to change?
Okay, so my breakdown of patients are basically 70% women, 20% children, and 10% men.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think men all still suffer from Superman syndrome, bulletproofness, you know. So I don't know what it is with men. They just either don't care or they don't care. I got no idea. Just men are a nightmare, all right, when it comes to their health. But women, women are really good. Women, I just work with women all day long. I just love working with women. They you know, they do what they're advised to do when they come to see me. They take it seriously. They do what they're advised to do, and they just get better. You know, that's what they do. So with a woman, and I'll generalize here, right? I'm just going to generalize. But, you know, you'll often get the case where you've got a woman that's had a couple of children in her early 20s, you know, 30s. The kids are now 17, 18. They can look after themselves. Mum's given everything, her soul, her life to these children and just bringing them up, you know. From the very first time that she's got 2 children and hadn't sat down at a dinner table, you know, because she's been eating, standing up, trying to feed the babies and getting ready and doing all of this. I see all of that, you know, all that stress and all that trauma. And today, even just, it's more intense for mums today because they seem to be running them around everywhere in cars, to the schools, to the sports, to everywhere. I don't remember my mum doing any of that. All right. So if I wanted to play sports, best I find somewhere close and walk to it, no matter what age I was at. Right. So there's a lot of giving amongst women. They get to a point where the kids are kind of grown up a little bit and they're feeling, you know, maybe perimenopausal, maybe they're feeling frumpy, they're feeling overweight, they're feeling unattractive, they're feeling, you know, unloved. They look at themselves in the mirror and this is what they tell me, this is what they show. They look at themselves in the mirror and they don't remember themselves as the vital woman that perhaps they once were. They see an older person here, and inside that older person is still a younger woman trying to get out. So they come to see me, and I guess most of the patients that I have are between 40 and 60, 35 and 65, but the biggest chunk is between 40, 42, 43, just perimenopausal, just premenopausal, all the way through to that kind of 60s thing. And these are women that just are trying to get healthy again. They got the kids off their backs now. The kids are looking after themselves. They're catching the bus to school. They're doing whatever they're doing. And you know what they tell me? This is my year. This is now for me. This is my time. I've done what I had to do for the family. I've looked after my family, and I'm a single, maybe they're a single mum. I worked it really hard. I'm a single mum. I had 2 of those in today, and they were just over it, and they want to get better. And that's who I see. That's the predominance of who I see. And again, you know, you've had 20 years of not eating properly, making, you know, spaghetti bolognese for your children, eating lots of bread because you're on a budget, you're trying to do all this stuff, and perhaps the foods weren't so good. And when you were married, you were a size 6, now you're a size 16, and you go, I just need to make a change. And that's very gratifying for us to be able to help, you know, that particular type of patient. And I must say that patient is my favorite patient, because those are the women, those people are coming in for themselves. They're coming in, they're like you've got to a point in life where you were in discomfort, not getting help, you stumbled across me, and things started making sense again. And I sleep well at night knowing that I've been able to help people on their way. And in fact, you know, I've had women bring their children in, you know, and then the children are now coming to see me because they've gone off the tracks. And I've even had a couple of situations where I've seen the grandparents, the daughter and the granddaughter all throughout my 30 years, you know, at some point or another. So it's nice to be able to help people.
Is it too late to get yourself back on track? Is it ever too late?
It's too late when you're dead. That's too late. Is it too late? The oldest patient I ever had was something about 95. No,
there's the answer. There's the answer.
It's not too late. Listen, don't leave it. If you're watching this video, don't procrastinate. If you're feeling that you're not feeling the way in which you should feeling, and you are getting that bloating and that tired and that headache, and life's in a whole cotton wool, you know, environment, don't leave it. Just get organized. And I have patients that maybe have left it because they haven't come across me, and then they come across me when they're 60 or 70. I had a 73-year-old today. She was absolutely gorgeous. She came in to see me. She wasn't too bad. She was we talked about her life. She was born in 1947 in Germany. She'd left Germany when she was 22. She said she'd left Germany and felt that she never wanted to go back to Germany. She came to Australia. She lived in Melbourne for 20 years. And she was married and then divorced and then brought up a kid, and she was a little old lady now, and she'd come in to see me, and she said, I just want to check. So I went through the whole thing with her, and I said, you know, I've got to tell you, you're really not too bad. You're pretty good. I can't really find too much stuff going on, but I can make some general changes for you, you know, because this is wrong and that's not quite right, and this needs a bit of attention. She was a Buddhist. She fell in love with the philosophy maybe 15, 20 years ago, and has been a practicing Buddhist ever since. And it was all part of her journey to make sure that she was good. We talked about death a little bit, and she goes, I'm a Buddhist. I don't, you know, if I die tomorrow, I have a different viewpoint. She goes, I don't want to die tomorrow. She goes, I want to continue to live and live my life, you know, because I enjoy life and I want to live for a long time, but I'm happy with my life. And so is it too late? No. You see, you get people that want still advice and attention, and they're just looking at fine tuning. So we don't just do the big things. We also get our patients in that have done a lot of hard work, and they just want confirmation that they're on the right road. It's never too late. Seriously, never too late.
It's never too late, and we don't need to wait until there's a crisis before we see.
Don't wait until the crisis.
Don't wait until, in fact, don't wait until there's a crisis. Get on with it.
Yeah, get yourself battle ready for life before you need it. Build it before you need it. Build your health before you need it. You know, Vivian and I, you know, we spend a lot of money on health and nutrition. Seriously, we don't smoke, we don't drink, we don't go out that much for, although we enjoy, we live in a beautiful part of the world, so we do go out a little bit sometimes, but we don't smoke, we don't drink, we don't do recreational drugs. Neither of us are on any medication. I went and recently had my cardiovascular system completely checked over, because my dad died at 62, my uncle died at 49, my grandfather died at 58. So I went to the doctors and they said, look, I've got this family history. He said, well, let's get you in, let's get everything. They did absolutely everything from CT scans of my heart to injections, measuring isotopes through my blood and the whole thing. And he said, it is rare that we get a 53-year-old with such exceptional cardiovascular health. They couldn't believe it. They couldn't find any heart disease. It was just amazing. But it didn't come out of nowhere. That didn't come by luck. That wasn't genetics. It certainly wasn't genetics, because I've got all this genetic rubbish going on. It was hard work. Vivian and I live our life, my wife and I live our life by the fact that we don't want to get sick. Not for the sake of not getting sick, but we want to enjoy life for as long as we can and be as healthy as possible. And if that means that I have to look after myself, for 30 or 40 years to be able to enjoy my life, then that's what we do, So we have a different mindset. I get a lot of patients that I fix them, they get better, they're all evangelical, and want to save the world on their newfound health for 12 months, and then they revert back to old habits again. So we try not to do that, just because life is valuable and we really enjoy our life. So that's what we do.
I've always been of that. I've always spoken, which is, you have nothing if you don't have your health.
100%.
And so literally, when this happened to me, it was a massive wake-up call. But one of the things that we talked about very briefly was when you started to educate me about probiotics.
Yes.
And then you said, in the UK, for instance, we don't see that, we really do treat our health secondary compared to, like, for instance, in Australia, where you are, where you talk about on every street corner, there's a health practitioner hanging around, or a shop or something.
That is not an exaggeration.
Whereas here, I've heard of probiotics, but I've heard of something called, I think, Yakult.
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 Yeah.
And I thought, Yakult. I thought, oh, you drink one of those. That was it. That was as much as I thought. Didn't really know what it does for you. We don't seem to have the same extensive education around why we need to do this proactive work around our health before it gets to that point.
Absolutely. So the probiotic that I put you onto is 450 billion bacteria per dose. 450 billion. That is an inordinate amount of, microbes. A good probiotic in Australia would be 25, 30 billion. So I put you on to one that's 450 billion. Good one is 25, 30 billion. Yakult is about 2 billion. 2 billion compared to 450 billion. All right. Even if you just take out the billion, 2 compared to 450. If I gave you £2 compared to 450 pounds, you're going to be going 450 pounds is a lot more than £2, right? So that is because, and last time I was in the UK, just a few short years ago, I had a look around, with things like probiotics and health food stores and one thing and another. And I kind of gauged that you were still 20 years behind Australia right across the board in health, from the quality of the foods, from the quality of the supplements to the intensity and intensity of the products that you could buy. You were a little bit behind, and that's okay, because there's Amazon and there's the internet today, so nothing is that far away if you really want to. But probiotics, the research that has been done with probiotics in the last 5 years is, again, monstrous. We're now understanding that if you have good probiotics in the gut, and I mean really load them up like I've done with you, really good probiotics in the gut, and we get rid of the fungal infections and the yeast infections, and we set that bowel back to normal, that the probiotics could create their own little environment, their own little world, little kind of cities, if you like. And part of that world that they create is that they produce some very, very powerful immunomodulators, which are then absorbed into the bloodstream and help people with all kinds of things, from lupus to arthritis to allergies to even things like certain types of cancers. All right. So the fact that you, as an intelligent person that understands to a moderate level nutrition and all of these things, had no or very little understanding or virtually no understanding of probiotics, because the information is not out there in the general public like it is in Australia, is quite upsetting that you don't have the opportunity for your health that perhaps we do in Australia. It's out there, but it's not readily available for the general public. And that I found really sad. It was kind of upsetting that you, as an intelligent person, perhaps didn't, have that information. I can speak to any patient here, virtually any patient that comes in. I don't care what they are. And I will talk to them and say, I need to put you on a probiotic. Do you have a probiotic? 80% of those patients, off the street patients, will go, yeah, I got one in the fridge, a really good one. Okay, well, we'll get you on that to start with. 80%. The other 20% will at least go, yeah, well, I know what a good probiotic is. I just haven't got one. Yeah. All right. Yeah. And I just don't see that in the UK. I mean, maybe I haven't delved enough into the general populace. Maybe it is, but, I just don't see, last time I was there, that kind of understanding of that. And the gut, years ago, we used to talk about, I never, because I had a really good understanding of the gut, but years ago, you speak to a lot of practitioners and they go, you need to fix the liver. The liver is the root of all of your illness. You need to fix the liver, right? And I always looked at that and thought, you don't need to fix the liver. You need to fix the gut. If you've got a poorly gut, a dysfunctional, dysbiotic gut, dys meaning bad, biotic meaning bacteria, bad bacteria, nasty tummy. If you've got one of those and, you are not fixing that and going back to cleaning that tummy out, then you're never, ever going to get better, because that dysbiosis in the gut will ferment. It'll produce huge amounts of toxic effects, which will create illness and sickness. And so the very seat of so many people's bad health is primarily their gut. So I just don't understand how, we have so many people here, or in the UK, that really just, I guess it's the genders again. I had a patient this morning. I mean, what's the time now? Not we're on a rush, but it's 9 o'clock now. My first patient this morning was at 9 o'clock, and it was a Zoom patient in Virginia, Virginia, USA. And she is probably 23 years old, probably the worst allergy patient I've seen in like decades, like poor girl, but I went through all of this thing. Now, to her credit, she was taking some, vitamins that she bought from the health food shop, and they weren't particularly good. And I explained to her the differences between different styles and one thing and another, which was very grateful for. But at no point with all of this allergy has anybody put her onto a probiotic. And this is in the US, so I don't think it's endemic to the UK. I think that it is endemic to so many other countries that just don't place enough emphasis on gut health. Again, we're starting to see a movement towards this now across the globe, but I think the more that we understand that the gut is really the responsible area for 80% of all illness, then the better we're going to get. And the absolute tip top of the mountain of that is make sure that you get that good high dose effective probiotic in over an extended period of time. So probiotics are it, and your court doesn't count.
Is it something that you take for forever then?
No. Look, no, you should be able to. Let me give you an example of what a probiotic is like. You've got a garden, right? A garden. In that garden, you've got lots of weeds growing, lots of thistle and just weeds and clover and horrible rubbishy stuff. So you got a nice garden. You want a nice garden. You call in the landscaper, and the landscaper says you've got heaps of weeds. You've got thistle there. You've got, dock leaves and clover and all this stuff. I'm trying to remember all this from England, right? You've got all this stuff going on, all right? And we need to get rid of it. So you go, okay, landscaper, how do we do that? I said, okay, so this is what we're going to do. I'm going to come in and I'm going to scrape 2 inches off the top of your soil, and I'm going to get rid of all that rubbish. I'm going to get rid of all them old leaves. We're going to just get rid of it all, and we're going to allow new dirt underneath. Then I'm going to come in and I'm going to seed that dirt, all right? And we're going to seed it, and we're going to really seed it. We're not going to just sprinkle a little bit of grass seed on there. I mean, we are going to seed that, and then we're going to turn it over, and then we're going to water it. And then we're going to water it, and then we're going to feed it. And then all of a sudden, you're going to see grass coming up, yeah? And it's going to take 2, 3, 4 weeks for the grass to start to come up. Then we're going to continue to look after that. But we don't need to seed it to that extent. If you are prone to bloating, then you should be on perhaps a good probiotic on a regular, semi-regular basis. All right. But it is important that if you have a dysfunctional gut, that we literally do what I've just told you the gardener's got to do. We've got to get rid of everything. We've got to clear it out. We've got to put the heavy duty probiotic, like I did with you, the heavy duty probiotic. And we've got to really let that grab hold, take hold, whether it's 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is. We're going to really let that take hold. And then afterwards, we can migrate to a standard probiotic. And then we're going to do that for another 12 months, just like I told you. And then we're going to see where this all goes. All right. And that should be enough to get the grass to grow so that you can go in there, cut the grass, or maintain that healthy gut bio.
Thanks for that. So I understand that, but in terms of looking for anything of feeling in any way, you've used the analogy of grass. How would you feel to know that it's time, you're good, you've sown your seeds kind of thing?
Okay, so basically, we follow a time frame from experience. So, we've got somewhere between 8 and 4, 6, 8 weeks on a heavy duty probiotic. That will be enough. Then we are going to use a standard probiotic, and then we're going to continue that for another 6 or 12 months. So just experience allows me to know what we should be doing. By that time, your gut should be good. And then if you do feel a little bit of bloating that's come for a week, don't leave it. Don't go, I'll see where this goes over the next 6 months, only to get worse, which is what people do. Go, have a bit of intelligence there and go, I've got a bit of bloating for a week. I'll go down the health food shop or the chemist, down to Boots, and I'll go and, I'll get some more probiotics, the good probiotics. I'll take that for another 2 or 3 weeks, probably settle my tummy down, be better on my diet, and then keep going. I don't do super duper diets for life, because quite frankly, they're boring. They alienate you from your friends and from, from people. And so if you need to change your diet, we'll make changes. We'll do it for a period of time, 6, 8, 12 months, whatever we need to do. And then we'll introduce some food. So after 4, 5, 6 months, we can introduce a bit here, introduce a bit there, have a coffee and cake with your girlfriends, go out and have a meal with your partner, and do some things if you want. But we don't want to be doing that every day. We don't want to get back to 6 or 8 coffees a day. All right. We don't want to be doing that. We don't want to be getting back to eating, you know, bowls of Wheat Bix and Ready Break in the morning because that's what you think's good. We want to maintain and look after what we've set in motion and break it sometimes. I was out for 4 days on a beautiful place here in Queensland called Fraser Island. Some of you,
Oh, no.
you know that? Yeah,
Yeah.
Fraser Island. And we were 4 days on Fraser Island, and we went to the resort there, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And I don't eat rubbish, and so I opted for the every morning. Vivian and I and our 2 friends opted for the fry up, you know, the full English, if you like. So we had that on the buffet, but also in the corner of my eye, I saw a big thing of cereal, and I saw a big thing of Cocoa Pops. I haven't eaten Cocoa Pops in years. You know, they're really bad. They're chocolatey. They're really horrible for you. Don't give them to your kids. They'll send them off on a tangent with ADD. And every morning, I had a big bowl of Cocoa Pops. It was absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed it. And I kept saying to my wife, I kept saying to Vivian, hey, listen, I'm eating this Cocoa Pops because I know on Monday it's back to normal, back to being good again.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, we enjoy eating different foods. I enjoy eating a pizza now and again. I just don't eat crap and rubbish every day. I keep it for when I want to have it. I don't have it for the sake of having it, if that makes sense.
I think it is. I mean, it is one of the biggest things that stops people actually taking control of their health because of it's all about feeling deprived, isn't it? You know?
Yes.
I think mentally we feel deprived. We know that it's good for us to do what's good for us, but because of all of the array of feeling left out, and feeling as though, you know, you go to an event and there's all of these things that you can't have. So suddenly you're on the outside.
That's right. And that's what I say to you. Be good at home so that when you go out to the event, you can have things on the outside. But, you know, we're humans, right? We don't like, we're very, you know, we're not, you know, we're not Victorians. And when I say Victorians, we're not of the age of Queen Victoria where, you know, you were told what to do and the masses complied. Today we have a lot more free speech, and today we don't want to be told what to do. In fact, I think this is half the problem why 3/4 of the world has all got COVID, because we don't want to be told what to do, and we don't want to be told not to stay home, and we don't want to be told to wear masks, and so we rebel. And this is human nature. We rebel. And, you know, when you say to somebody, you can't have that cake and you can't have that glass of wine, people go, I don't care. I want to have it. So before I see my patients, or as we're starting, I kind of do a psychological profile on them, if you like, and say, after I've gone through everything, say, listen, you don't have to do what I'm going to tell you to do. But if you want to get better, you have to do what I'm going to tell you to do. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, I want to get better, but I don't want to change. There is no, I don't negotiate with food. All right, I don't go. I know what's going to upset you. Like I had a patient this afternoon trying to negotiate with me because of coffee, and you know, it was like I'd taken her oxygen away. It's like I sold her a child or something. You know, it was that traumatizing for her. And I said to her, you just have to stop right there, because on one hand, you're telling me you want to get better, and on the other hand, you're crying about the coffee. When the pain of what you're feeling on a regular daily basis is outstripped by the pleasure of your coffee, at that point, you will change. Are you at that point? And she went, I'm at that point. I said, great. So there's our answer. So no more crying about the coffee. The coffee is going to kill you for 5 days, all right? After which time you're going to get better. But again, in as much pain that she was in, she didn't want to be told what to stay away from. So it takes a lot of skill as a clinician to bring that home to a way in which they can understand that without being rude and offensive and, you know, and belittling the patient. But, you know, if you kind of see me practicing in clinic, like I did with you, you know, I don't take prisoners. You're in. That's it. You want to get better? This is what you got to do. Don't waste your time. You're not wasting my time because I always get paid. So you're not wasting my time, but don't waste your time.
Oh,
And
your
don't
money.
waste your money. And that's the thing, so it's about, it's about making people take responsibility for their recovery. And if it means you've got to give some things up and you're going to get this huge payoff, then you've got to do it. It's like a mortgage, isn't it? You go through the years of paying that mortgage and giving up other things so that you can pay that mortgage or that car loan or whatever. And at the end of the day, you get the benefit, and the benefit is you've got the thing and you own it. So own your health, that's it. That's what you got to do.
I love that. I'm gonna say that. Right, so I'm going to be looking at wrapping up now, Dougie, and just love to say thank you for your time. But just so that if there's anything like three to five practical tips that you can pass on to the ladies, your top tips that they can maybe perhaps implement straight away. I mean, you've told us one, which is own your health.
Look, I've got 4 or 5 top tips. I guess I can give you some good things. Is that it's probably not too late to make a change. If you are feeling, let me run through some of the symptoms. Maybe that's a little bit better, and then
that's good.
So I deal specifically with bowel and immune allergies and hay fever and eczema and these things, but especially I work with bowel problems. And if you are feeling bloated, if you are feeling tummy aches and belly aches and maybe having problems going to the toilet, diarrhea or constipation, maybe you're having a lot of gas or reflux, if you're feeling tired and irritable and moody and poor memory and vague and a lack of concentration, if you're feeling that your whole life is in a fog of, a head fog, that you can't find clarity, you find difficulty in making decisions, this is generally not a mental or emotional problem. It's going to be nearly always a physical problem, and it's going to come down to your gut, and it's going to be one of the key areas that I specialize in successfully with dealing with our patients. So I guess you need to be able to make a decision at that point that if you're willing to make a change, see somebody, whether it's myself or somebody else. I don't know what you want to do with that, but don't procrastinate. Own your health. Don't procrastinate. Don't, put off tomorrow what you can do today. Life is valuable. Every day that goes by is another day that you lose of feeling potentially good. I know and sometimes, that it's not the right time for people. It's not the right time. But if it is the right time and the time is now for you, then, make a change. That's the tips that I can give you, rather than, it's very hard for me to say, change your diet, do this, do that.
No, I understand that.
But, for, so much of what people feel can be food related, just like you. And grab the opportunity to work with somebody that perhaps, has experience in that. And I've loved working with you, and we'll continue to work together. And we've already had a bit of a pre-discussion before our recording here on some of the things that
I disappeared because I'm guilty of. I just thought, shall I just admit things? I was saying to Dougie, I've still got a couple of flare-ups and my back and da-da-da. Dougie just goes, diet. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but... And then I sit back and I think, have you actually done everything that Dougie said? And the answer's no. And so there's my answer. I haven't done everything. And I feel embarrassed and a bit disappointed with myself, because you really held out on me, didn't you? You were like, but I suppose, does everyone do? I mean, you're gonna get the people like me who,
and that's why I get them back. And this is why we have repeat consultations, because people feel they let themselves down, and they haven't. They just need somebody to steer them back on the track. All you did is you came off a little bit, and I need to
Came off
steer
a
you
bit
back.
early.
Sorry?
I came off a bit early because I felt because I felt I got some success. I was like, oh, I'm fine, and then it's like, I'm really not. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, you did a bit early.
yeah,
So anyway,
just premature.
so
So I'd just like to say it's been absolute fantastic speaking to you, and I think this is going to be a real education for our ladies. So if somebody wants to work with you, get in touch with you, how do we do that?
okay, so look, probably the best thing to do, they can either go through you if you want to work it that way, or they can come through me direct. If they come through me direct, go to my website, sensitivefoods.com. They can leave me a message on there, and I'll get back to them. We do have a time frame difference, a time zone difference here. So it's 9 o'clock at night now, 20 past 9 at night. I try not to work at night. So if I do see patients in the UK, it's probably going to be early morning for you, and that will be late afternoon, evening for me. So depending on how many patients, decide to have a chat with me, we'll try and accommodate as best as we can. But yeah, we'll try and help you out. And, one thing which is good is that although I'm in Australia, we have strong links to the UK, in as much that, I understand food. I understand British food. I understand UK food. I understand all kinds of different cultural foods from the UK. So, feel confident at least that, I've got your back with understanding and helping you through that. And that's important, so happy days. Give me a call, or contact me, I should say, or go through you, whichever way you feels appropriate. And I'll see if I can help as many of your
I'm sure you absolutely can. And I'd just love to say thank you so much, Dougie. Thank you ever so much. It's been a pleasure.
You have a great day, and I'm going to probably just